Welcome back. My name is Ed Harper. This is Pathfinder Session 7. And I'd like to begin by saying that this session was developed for Pathfinder as a special request from me. All right. You might recall that we first introduced a broad overview of the Adjunct Faculty Trainer Institute during the Distance Learning Adaptation Forum back in May of this year. Emphasis on broad overview, okay? Describing what it was, how it worked, and as implemented by the College of DuPage in Chicago. Since then, NCCET and the College of DuPage have agreed to collaborate in making the benefits of AFTI that much more accessible to our member colleges, something which you should all be looking at very closely given the challenges facing us all during this continuing pandemic, okay? But that first session in May was really just part one of the story, all right? Part one explained what it was and what it looked like. Now we're about to hear part two, which explains why you should do it, okay? What's the real value of the investment in teacher training for your institution? What does the data say about the impact on student success, all right? Increased student retention and instructor proficiency for those that have actually used this program, okay? This is our opportunity to get a chance to look under the covers. NCCET board member Joe Cassidy is here with his team to answer these questions. You guys should take this opportunity to begin to understand what's in it for you. I want you to use the Q&A window at the bottom of the screen to send us your questions at any time during the presentation. And what we're going to do is save time after their presentation to answer those questions. So again, my name is Ed Harper. It's my pleasure to introduce Joe Cassidy, who'll take the lead now and introduce his team. Joe?
Well, thank you so much, Ed, and thank you for inviting us to talk about what we're doing to develop adjunct faculty at the College of DuPage, but also thank you, NCCET, for working with us as a partner to bring anything we're doing that we think is of value to all of your members. The sharing you lead across the nation and between colleges is important for us, more important than ever. So thank you for today's opportunity and your ongoing work as an organization. While investing in the professional development across industries is a long-standing practice, when it comes to higher ed, we struggle at times to invest in faculty development, let alone adjunct faculty training or the development of our contingent or part-time faculty, upon which we're increasingly dependent in higher education. So while there's several starting points to build a business case for investing in your adjunct faculty, I'd like us to consider that in a relatively short period of time, America's view of the importance of college, of a college degree, has declined significantly. Now, before I get started, I'd like to introduce my colleagues who are the driving force behind the work we're doing on campus to support adjunct faculty. Sonia Watson is the Interim Assistant Dean for Adjunct Faculty Support at College of DuPage. She received her master's degree in leadership studies from North Central College. She's currently a doctoral candidate studying organizational development at Benedictine University. Sonia has over 2 decades experience as an educator with extensive experience in training and development. Jennifer Walsh is a program manager for Business Solutions, our corporate contract training entity at the college. She received her bachelor's degree in business administration from the University of Illinois, her master's of arts in teaching from National Louis, and she supervises a number of professional development programs, successful professional development programs, including the Adjunct Faculty Training Institute, which Ed mentioned. So as you can see, I mentioned the declining view on among Americans and the importance of a higher ed degree. Here you see Gallup polls from 2012 and 2019. And in just 7 years, you can see that those saying a college degree, higher education is very important, has gone from a large majority to a very slight majority. There are many reasons for this decline. There are studies that tell us, that point to degree inflation, the phenomenon of requiring college degrees for jobs that don't require college level skills. And higher ed says that as of 2020, about 41% of recent grads were doing work that didn't require their degree. Another 34% were underemployed. So no matter what the case and the cause for this decline in the belief in higher education and the importance of a degree, this gets at our lifeblood. Enrollment is declining. There's a lot of reasons for that, but if we're not investing in our faculty, in our adjunct faculty, then we've got a problem. There's certainly great data out there that still says a college degree matters. Increased lifetime earnings, increased opportunity. Unemployment rates are always better for college grads than non-grads. But again, we're going to be under increased pressure to demonstrate our relevance and our value. And the skyrocketing cost of higher ed, which is both increasing tuition costs, but also the cost of delayed graduation, has led to what is really a student debt crisis. So the country's looking at $1.3 trillion of student debt. We've got people graduating college, they can't buy a car, they can't buy a house, they're not contributing to the economy in the ways we used to be able to. So again, the pressure is increasing for us to deliver. The American Council on Education informs us that it's increasingly, in our increasingly complex world, students need effective instruction more than ever. We need teachers that are clear, that are organized, teachers who understand how students learn. We need teachers to help students accelerate their learning path, to reduce the time and cost of college. ACE makes the case that effective instruction directly impacts student success. This seems obvious. We have countless studies supporting this, and we still underinvest in faculty professional development. ACE reminds us, and my colleagues will show you shortly, that the techniques for effective instruction are known, and they can be shared. That's the good news. ACE informs us that the cost of attrition and delayed graduation for both students and our institutions is extremely high. The dollars we invest in recruiting and onboarding a student are wasted if we have a student who doesn't complete, or a student who takes 6 or 8 years to complete. So the impact of subpar teaching is impacting student debt as well as our institution's bottom line. There are many benefits that come with adjunct faculty. You have a close connection to industry. They bring innovative approaches. And we tend to underdevelop or commit resources to teaching them how actually to teach. So our investment in adjunct faculty is not commensurate with our reliance upon them. The last couple of years, the percentage of adjunct faculty teaching across all U.S. higher education institutions has declined a little bit, but that's actually has more to do with declining enrollment overall and institutions shutting their adjunct faculty first. So it's really not a conscious effort to invest more in full-time faculty. It has to do with other factors. But look around, I have friends' kids going to campus now. We're investing huge amounts of money in beautiful dorm rooms and the student experience. And we should be. They should have a wonderful experience. Yet the single most critical factor to a student's experience comes down to strong teaching. And just looking, I'm sorry, Jennifer, going back for 1 second. Just to sum up that slide there, on a whole, about 49% of all adjunct faculty of the country teaching in higher ed right now in the US are adjunct. Slightly higher at four-year institutions, and then it's still almost at 70% for community colleges. At College of DuPage, our reliance on adjunct faculty is even greater than the national average. So we're at 82% of faculty are adjunct. We're a large institution about 30 miles west of Chicago. We're actually the second largest institution of higher ed in Illinois. And because of that, we have a large full-time faculty body. We have 300 full-time faculty, but we rely on 1,400 plus adjunct faculty to teach our degree courses. If you add in continuing education, add another 600 adjunct faculty per year that we rely on. So given our reliance on adjunct faculty, our boss, all of the folks, the presenters on this call today, had the wherewithal, the foresight to create an Office of Adjunct Faculty Support back in 2012. That group is led by Sonia, they've instituted orientation for adjunct faculty, training, a schedule of observations, a feedback process, and ultimately the Adjunct Faculty Training Institute to better prepare these teachers, these content experts who are not expert in teaching. So I mentioned the Gallup polls. Another study conducted by CNBC reported that as many as 44% of Americans are seriously questioning the value of college. Parents and students are looking more closely than ever at our completion rates, our placement rates. They're looking at the ROI that they'll get back from what they invest in our institutions. At the same time, competition for students is at an all-time high. In Illinois, pre-COVID, we were approaching 50% of all of our college-age students migrating out of state to go to college. Recruitment is intense. If we aren't demonstrating that we're going to put our best foot forward by training our faculty to improve the outcomes, parents are going to notice that, students are going to notice that, and it's going to hit our enrollment. At the same time, higher ed is becoming increasingly data-driven. So if we're not paying attention to what we're doing to develop our faculty, not tracking that, monitoring outcomes, again, that's going to hurt us in our enrollment. It's also likely going to hurt us in terms of funding. Our adult education program at College of DuPage has increased its grant funding 94% over the past 10 years. And we've done that because of performance-based outcomes. Our student outcomes keep getting better. The single best thing we have done, the biggest single investment we've made is in training our adjunct faculty. So we are seeing the return on that as higher ed moves to performance-based education or our funding. The last bullet here, I know all of our institutions are talking about equity and inclusion, but not all students are prepared in the same manner for college. So if we're not investing in preparing our adjunct faculty to understand how to reach all students, we're just giving equity and inclusion lip service. So I could go on this last point forever, but I'd like to get into the nitty-gritty from the experts who are actually doing the work, and I'll turn it over to my colleagues. I think we'll start with Sonia to tell us more about what the college is doing. Hoping folks can replicate it or tap into what we're doing. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. So as you mentioned, one of the things that we know is that change is a constant that we can count on in higher education. Institutions are consistently confronted with an array of challenges and a need for positive change, especially right now in our current environment in the global pandemic. Our institutions and our educators really must work together to strive for instructional innovation. We need to return to a focus on teaching and learning and looking at where our outdated processes and techniques really do help to see what we need to do in the future, meeting our adjuncts where they're at, like we would with our students, and in order to promote and foster student success. So we looked at our process, and with that, we looked at a review of our current model and practices. Is what we're doing, is it working? And if it's not, how can we fix it? How can we change it? How can we adapt it? How can we be innovative as well? So looking at the current model, we made it our goal to be a part of the change that was needed in higher ed. We concentrated on the potential of our efforts and saw the need for making connections, for sure. The connections that we focused on were between student success and professional development strategies. We wanted these to be supportive strategies that help to foster long-term success for our faculty. So it brought us down to effort, you know, and as Joe mentioned, what are we going to do so that it's not just lip service? And it reminded me of this quote that I had come across in my studies. Every effort to improve the working conditions of contingent faculty ultimately highlights the ways those faculty positions remain inadequately supported and out of alignment with the conditions of tenure-line faculty. We're just not doing the same things that we do for our full-time faculty. So it sends a message of, you're good enough to teach our students, but you're not good enough to invest in. And we need to change that dynamic. So what do we know? We know that our students that were taught 20 years ago, as I've taught for 20 years now, are very different from our current traditional students. Traditional students don't know life before Google. They seek instant gratification, and in knowing that, they've been conditioned and trained to have their questions answered instantly by asking Google, asking Siri. They can get those right away. Well, it changes the dynamic on how they learn. And we know that they no longer prefer to learn by listening to hours of lecture, and they have different learning styles and preferences than students did 20 years ago. So in looking at that, it's important for us to look at, what is most important and what would they benefit from in their learning styles right now. So we consider some of the facts that we know about our adjunct faculty. Over the past several decades, institutions really have become increasingly reliant on adjunct faculty and part-time workers to do the teaching. And in doing so, the amount of investment for training, professional development has not been equal. It has not increased, even though the need for them has increased. So let's talk a little bit more about this. So adjunct faculty, a misconception is that they're not as educated, and they really are. They're equally as qualified as our full-time faculty. They teach about 58% of the classes in community colleges. You saw earlier when Joe presented, we've got about 82% at COD. So this is something that's changing and increasing, whether it's a 2-year or 4-year institution. So a couple things. We know that 70% roughly of all new hired faculty in community colleges are adjuncts. Knowing that, and knowing that they're as dedicated as our full-time faculty, another misconception is that they're thought of as transient, that they're going to come and work for us, for a semester or two, and then they're going to leave. But we have people that have been with us at COD for 20 plus years. And that's actually the increasing norm. I've got tons of people that I've hired, that have been with us for 10 years plus. So the focus in understanding, okay, they're not transient as they were once thought of. They are equally as educated and equally as committed to students. We have to treat them equally as our full-time faculty and provide opportunities for them. So a couple of the things that we looked at was creating this training institute. So with the Adjunct Faculty Training Institute that was established in 2016, we looked at teacher training at the college level for those that have completed master programs or those content experts that are coming into higher ed and looking to teach. We understand that, they're content experts and they may not have learned, the method in which they can facilitate engagement in the classroom. But that's where our department really comes in and works in conjunction with the AFTI program. We know that they make up a large portion of the workforce, especially at our school. We also know that through our office in adjunct faculty support, the need that we had by seeing the observations that we conducted of our own adjunct faculty, the trends that were consistent, there was a need for several areas, and those different areas were courses that we developed into our Adjunct Faculty Training Institute. We wanted to create a way to introduce different pedagogical tools as well as tech training for our college instructors.
Thank you, Sonia. So in our institute that we created with the Office of Adjunct Faculty Support, we established the institute in 2016, like Sonia mentioned. We currently have 4 courses in the institute. The Introduction to College Teaching class. This is the class for new instructors that are just entering this field, and those with traditional master's programs that do not have the foundational teaching experience to help with student success. So in this course, instructors will learn how to create syllabi and lesson plans. They'll learn about formative and summative assessments and when to use each, and just really how to engage students in learning. So we offered this class in 2016, and after about 2 years with the Office of Adjunct Faculty Support, we decided that we needed another course or more courses for experienced teachers. So that's where we came up with the learner-centered teaching class. And this kind of builds on skills that instructors have already, but really delves deeper into transitioning their class from teacher-led to learner-centered class, and how to really engage students and deepen understanding for today's student. Like we mentioned, today's student is a lot different than students that entered college 20 years ago and even 10 years ago. They want to learn by doing. They do not prefer lectures. So the learner-centered teaching is really a course for instructors that have been teaching one semester or for many years. During the last year, we rolled out 2 of our other classes, Assessment of Student Learning and Diversity, Social Justice, and Inclusion in the Classroom. So for the assessment class, you know, instructors need to consistently or continually ask themselves, you know, what do my students need to know, and how will I know if they know that? You know, gone are the days of just traditional assessments. You have students with many different learning styles, so therefore we have to have different ways to assess students. So, you know, in your teaching toolkit, do you have alternative assessment methods? Our last class that we rolled out is the Diversity, Social Justice, and Inclusion class. This summer, the class started June 1st, shortly after the tragic death of George Floyd and the protests that followed. Students in that class were really interested in finding out what they could do in their classrooms as instructors. So they created a special discussion board that was entitled Best Practices for Achieving Diversity, Justice, and Inclusion while Incorporating Current Events in a Course. This served as a forum for them to share ideas and post resources and how to address current events in their classroom. The ideas from that forum were shared with the diversity, equity, and inclusion leaders at COD. And as Ed mentioned, you know, we have partnered together with NSET. So for NSET members, these courses are they receive a 25% discount. We have flexible start date for institutions that want cohorts on their own.
Thank you. So one of the things that we looked at, again, is, you know, at COD, why is there a need for training? We mentioned the start of my office was back to 2012. There was a need to provide additional support, especially with the large numbers and percentage of adjunct faculty that we have at COD. So that led to the creation of observations that was actually an expectation of the college. With that expectation led to identifying how do we observe, what are we looking for, and what are the trends that we're seeing. These observations help to identify those trends of our adjunct faculty. We saw the need for training, okay, and that was consistent, and it was a need for that and a need for teacher preparedness as it affects student success. This then developed the need for the Adjunct Faculty Training Institute. So one of the things that I wanted to mention was just from my own experience. I lived this. I was, you know, in a process at an institution in another state that I truly felt thrown to the wolves. And that was a consistent process that I've heard ever since for the last 20 years for any teacher that I've trained or have hired or have worked with, that they consistently go from institution to institution, and when they're hired, they're said, you know, you're hired, here's your book, and it's sink or swim. You got to figure out what you need to know, what you want to know, but a lot of times we don't know what we don't know. Many of the adjuncts, you know, like myself, didn't have a formal teacher training. We were content experts, and that's why we hire them. We need them. And so because of that, a lot of times they teach the way they were taught. I taught the way I was taught. And that resulted in me doing heavy lecture, okay, which was very different from what my students, preferred to learn. And then I understood, oh, wait, there's different learning styles. Oh, wait, they're not picking up what I'm throwing down. And I'm not the only one. That was consistent in what we heard from our adjuncts. I just don't think they're getting it, and the more we heard that, we're like, okay, what do we do to help them? And that's where it led to us really honing in on the type of training and specific trainings. We'd go into a class and they'd be on slide 3 of 187 because the slides came with the textbook publisher edition, and there's 187, so they're going to go through all of those. Having them understand you don't have to use every single one. Make sure that, lessons and content that you're providing, that it's purposeful, that it's meaningful. And what is it that you want, the students to learn? Start with the end in sight, giving them little objectives to tackle and to understand, to build as part of their teaching pedagogy. I had teachers that would tell me, where's the exam that comes with the book? So it just comes from a lack of understanding, and it was our goal to try to put that into a process that would support them. And so, we stopped and started thinking, and this is what I would tell our educators. I would say, what if I told you it's not your show, it's your students? It's not about you bequeathing your knowledge onto them. It's about engaging them in their own learning, have them be a key player. What if I told you you don't have to be exhausted after every class you teach? Because I know I was dead tired, and it was consistent in what I was hearing from other adjuncts as well. Oh my gosh, I'm so exhausted. I'm tired of talking all day, because you have to flip the switch. It's not about you, it's about your students, and getting them to see a perspective of, okay, how can I share this with my students? How can we do this together? How can I take more of a facilitative role that gets them to aspire to want to do more? It's a training process, but it can be done. And the last I told them, what if there was a way that you can engage, you can assess, and you can work smarter, not harder? And that for us is AFTI.
So the purpose of adjunct faculty training is, it's pretty simple. It's just to develop better teaching for instructors, whether they're new at teaching or they've been there for some time. We want to raise the quality of instruction across all departments within the institution. The outcomes, we want improved assessment and instruction techniques for our instructors. Also increase student success. Teachers that are better prepared are more likely to engage students, especially struggling students. And when students struggle, teachers that are better prepared to help them and keep them in class. We get improved student retention rates when teachers are better prepared also. And students that are struggling, that get help from their instructors, are more likely to enroll in following semesters. How will we manage those with master degrees and no teacher training? As we mentioned before, there are instructors that come to us with great subject matter knowledge, but just not the foundational skills for teaching. So I suspect, like us, most of you have a new teacher orientation that, takes teachers through your mission and objectives and the learning management system and student population. But formal training in college teaching for new instructors and subject matter experts is really important, for the success of those students and your institution. Another thing that is really important is feedback. Now, the Office of Adjunct Faculty Support, they do observations and give students feedback on how they're doing. In our introduction class, the last night of class, students prepare a mini lesson that they demo in front of the instructors and assistant dean, and they get very specific feedback on their teaching. So that's a real value to somebody who's new in teaching. And then how will we improve teaching proficiency of instructors that have experience. We'll continue to try to offer relevant professional development courses that improve teaching proficiency for our adjuncts and faculty. In fact, we had one of our professors took a learner-centered teaching class from us. And, after she took it, she said that the class invigorated her and she was able to learn simple and new strategies that really helped her students. So, what professor or instructor wouldn't want that for themselves? And what institution wouldn't want to hear that from one of their faculty members? Another way is administering course evaluation. So when courses are over, students evaluate the course and then the instructor, and that gives that instructor relative feedback on opportunities where they can improve and what they've done well. Recently, we sent out a survey monkey to COD instructors who took one or more of the AFTI classes. We asked 5 questions. We tried to make it really simple, and here's the feedback that we got. When asked if teachers felt more prepared after they took a class versus before they took it, 100% said that they felt more prepared. When asked about confidence level in teaching after taking an AFTI course, 70% of the people that took the class said that their confidence level was improved a lot or a great deal. 25% said a moderate amount. When we asked how valuable the AFTI course was to their teaching proficiency, 89% said that the value was either very or extremely valuable to their teaching proficiency. I mean, that's considerable. When asked what the most beneficial aspects of the course were, 75% said being able to use the strategies that they learned during the class in their own classes. 31% cited the subject matter relevance to teaching. And then 19% said, direct instructor feedback was important to them. When asked if they would recommend this AFTI course to others, 97% said yes.
So we did an additional survey in adjunct faculty support as well. And we conducted a survey that looked at all adjunct faculty that had completed their observation cycle within the last 2 years. And we had a total of 147 respondents. 94% of them indicated that they had taken some action to improve their teaching as a result of the observation. Most likely to have modified a technique where they used something with students, or they tried something different with their own teaching as well. So one of the questions that we had asked was, as a result of the observation process, and they were able to select all that applied, they have modified a technique or approach, tried a new technique, reviewed resources that were shared by our office, identified new professional development goals. They may have attended a course or workshop outside of COD. 12% actually attended a course or workshop that was through our AFTI program. And then we had some 8% that had not taken any action or used a peer collaboration or general action. So some of the things that we found out, which was very exciting for us, was that what we're doing is making a difference. In our qualitative measures, we were able to see, okay, for a majority of these adjuncts that have either never gone through an observation cycle, or some of them may have been teaching for a long time, it really was important for them to see new trends, new things that they could try in their teaching. We, as Jen mentioned, we had several full-time faculty that have taken these courses and felt reinvigorated to teach again after having taught for many years. Nationally, this is a service that just isn't provided for our adjuncts. At COD, we truly do make a conscious effort to support a historically underserved group of contingent workers. Support is provided, in different methods, as we mentioned, through our observations, through the training that are created based off of what their needs are. Those observations really help us to hone in on what trends are every semester, and it lends to the need for our AFTI program. You can go to the next slide. There we go. So what we can offer for continued support, not only for our adjuncts, is that we truly do welcome any opportunities to work with you and your faculty, both adjunct and full-time. We can support individuals, small groups, even cohorts from your institutions, and we do offer flexible start times. Please feel free to reach out to any one of us. We can provide information on the AFTI program, our dedication and support to educators across the nation. We have had students from all over the US take these courses with us, not only our COD adjuncts as well. And we're happy to communicate how our office runs, if that's something that you're looking to do, or if you'd like to work together and create a cohort for your institution, we can certainly help with that too. And if you have any questions, we can open it up for that.
Okay. All right, we actually have quite a few questions. Most of them have been provided by Andrea. Let me just see if she would like to actually speak on camera. Not on camera, but on mic. Andrea, can you hear us? Okay, I don't hear. Perhaps she's muted.
I can answer some of the questions. So one of the questions is who pays for the classes. So yes, the adjunct or student would pay for the classes. However, one of the things that we do at our institution is we do have professional development money for those that are a part of the union, and for those that aren't, I do try as much as I can to seek opportunities to help share in the balance of that cost, because not everyone that comes into these classes are COD adjuncts. We do have people that have come from, like I mentioned before, all over the nation. So a lot of times they get funding from their own institutions as well. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, Sonia. I just I was going to speak to this as well. We
Sure.
submitted a request for our own college foundation to provide some scholarship dollars for our own adjunct faculty. We'll share that with anyone on this call for you to make a similar case to your foundation or to local agencies. And as Sonia mentioned, this is also eligible for our human resources tuition benefit for those adjuncts who are available. So we'll share all of that with you if it helps you find funding for these folks. And we started by making it very affordable as well. It's pretty darn affordable, but we realize it's challenging, so we've done some things we'll gladly share with you.
Excellent. Let me just stop for a second. Andrea, did you want to join us? Okay. All right. I got to tell you, I have quite a few questions here because, frankly, number one, I was not aware that the adjunct faculty was twice the size of the full-time faculty in community colleges. And I gotta believe, just based on pure perception, that would make recruitment more difficult. Seems like we need to change the perception, because I gotta believe that the perception is, well, the full-time faculty is gonna be better than the adjunct faculty in most cases.
That is a common misconception, Ed, that they're not as dedicated, not as trained, but everyone does come to us as content experts, obviously. And it's not to say that our full-time faculty, regardless of institution, have that training either, right? Because you may be that content expert in that area, but may not have taken, courses in actual education or delivery. And so that's where we have found a lot of our full-time faculty really interested in taking the courses as well. And I know Andrew had asked a question that it kind of ties to this. Do you take the classes before, starting to teach? The intro class we definitely recommend because it really sets you up with a portfolio that you walk away with to better present yourself to be hired. And so that you don't have the feeling like I did and many have where you're thrown to the wolves and not knowing where to start. It really gives you that guidance in building your own pedagogy. And in doing that, that first class definitely helps out with that. Aside from that, we normally get a lot of people asking, hey, I want to teach higher ed, what do I do? Well, that class is perfect for it. The other courses you can take out of order. You don't have to have necessarily have taken the first one before you take it, because we do have current faculty, current adjuncts, both at COD and at other institutions that take those classes. So it's not a requirement that you do any of those before you start. And then really quick, the number of students on average, it does vary every semester. We try to keep them a little smaller. They all are delivered online, and we're able to open up second and third groups, courses and sections if need be. So that's why we've hired extra people that are all trained as well and in the different courses that we have created. I co-wrote 2 of the courses, the learner-centered and the assessment. I worked with our director of assessment to create the assessment course based off the trends that I was seeing when I went in for observations. Same with the learner-centered. It was something that was a great need that we saw from our adjuncts, that I saw at 2 other institutions that I was at as well. And in seeing that consistency, it just, showed us that it's something we have to dedicate our time to and effort, because as I mentioned before, it comes down to effort. But we do need to change our conception of them being adjuncts are not as qualified, because they are, and they're as dedicated, and just giving them the opportunity shows that we value you, and we are no longer giving the message of you're good enough to teach our students, but you're not good enough to invest. We got to change the dynamic. We have to be better.
And if that's the perception and perhaps the ratio that you experienced at College of DuPage, that's got to be comparable at least to so many other schools. I mean, and that's, I think, one of the things that I'm hoping that we can accomplish in working together. We really want to be able to get these other schools to be aware that there's an opportunity for them to work with you,
right,
in training their adjunct faculty as well. Are you aware of other institutes, anything like yours, anywhere else?
So we are one of very few, less than a handful that I know of in the nation that has a Department of Support, and that actually also has an institute that's designed the way that ours is designed. Even if you Google us, we're one of, if not the number one, we're the very top of for what we provide.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, a couple of our other instructors, Ed, did parts of this similarly in their master's in teaching program. So you'll find this in Masters of Teaching programs. And despite our reliance on the adjunct faculty body, we're still just scratching the surface in terms of onboarding these folks and training them.
I believe that. Now, the feedback that Jennifer provided when she was saying, here's what our instructors told us about their experience in taking these AFTI programs, was that feedback from full-time instructors that took the AFTI, or are we talking about feedback from the adjunct instructors?
It was from both full-time and adjunct instructors that answered the survey.
Okay, all right. What other, well, I guess I'm curious as to what other options they have. I mean, I guess they could pursue their own training and continued development, but considering the quality of the FTI training, I'd probably try to make it available to all of our instructors.
Yeah, we can certainly do
agree.
that.
And more importantly,
To
full-time faculty who've taken this course have said the same thing, Ed. They said everyone should take this. Whether you're brand new or you've been teaching for 10 years, we're in education. We should be committed to lifelong learning and our own development, but we don't always do that.
I'd like to add also that technical and trade schools are not immune to lack of teacher training. Baby boomers are holding a majority of these trade jobs, but as we know, there's a shortage in the trades, and firms are struggling to fill these positions. So there's going to be a need for teacher training in the trades as we anticipate, growth for new skilled workers. I got a call a couple of weeks ago from a technical college in Chicago, and they were looking for some type of training for their instructors that are highly trained in their field. They have programs like HVAC and electrical, constructional maintenance, medical coding and billing. And, the director of education was saying, they've got this great knowledge, but they just don't have the foundational teaching skills to impart that knowledge on students. So that's another thing to consider for technical and trade schools.
Do you take external content from other schools or partners and roll it into your AFTI curriculum?
So we took not necessarily other content, but we took and have several ancillary materials that together create the content for the course. So it's not just information that's COD based, it's information that helps the greater good.
Okay, all right. I guess
Sonia, similar to that, Ed, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sonia and Jennifer, students, the adjunct faculty or the faculty in it, they can be building the syllabi and the things for their courses at their campus, integrating their real world work. Okay.
Yeah, the great point, Joe. So one of the things that we do take pride in is that if you come and take one of our classes, say for example, you're creating a syllabi for a course that you're interested in teaching, you're not just creating a dummy assignment that's just going to be practice for a syllabus that you might use in the future. You're actually creating your own. So all of your assignments do build that eventual portfolio for your own teaching. Jennifer mentioned that after the intro class, the very last night, I go in, our managers come in, and the teachers all watch that presentation that they do for their teaching demo, which helps prepare them for their teaching demo for an interview. So we give them all the hot topics of things that people look for when they're hiring, so that you're prepared when you do go out looking for a position, whether it's with us or another institution. It really sets them up for success. The things that they learn in the learner-centered are all content specific to the areas that they're going to teach. So it's not like I'm just going to focus on, welding or accounting or math. We have a great partnership, and it really does build a lot of community within the groups too. I have a great relationship that was built from our organic chemistry adjunct with a French instructor. And what was beautiful about it is that they saw their classes as learning foreign languages. They created a service learning project, and they never would have communicated otherwise. And so it was an opportunity for them to share teaching techniques that work for them, that they have tried, what hasn't worked, and then build new ones together that are more learner-centered.
Okay. Did any of you see the Zoom session this morning?
I did not.
Okay, all right. I asked that question because they had a guest speaker, Michelle Weiss, Weiss, I believe it's pronounced properly, and she's written a book, Lifelong Learning, and she was absolutely amazing. She provided quite a bit of insight with regard to the need for people, for workers and people in the workforce, based on jobs that really are only now showing up and really haven't, haven't materialized yet.
Sure.
It seems like schools that have such a strong adjunct faculty component are those that could also respond fairly quickly to the need for some of the newer and more advanced curriculum instructors that are coming around and that are going to manifest themselves that much more in the months and years ahead. Am I correct? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Because, even thinking right now, the children that are born right now will have careers that have not even been invented yet, right? And so when we look at trends and we see that, and as I mentioned previously, our traditional students right now don't know life outside of Google. That is their go-to for questions. But it also affects their learning because they're not used to putting forth effort and work. And so understanding that, how do you reteach those learn to learn skills? How do you teach them to be inquisitive and ask a question that they may not have asked and then fall down that rabbit hole? Not all of them come to us so inclined to be able to do that. And so building that into your teaching and their learning really does prepare them. So when they go out in the workforce, our traditional students, right now, if you send them out, they may not be able to work together, but they might be a good student. But what we're helping to prepare them for is both, where they can work together, they can, incorporate their skills that they learned along with, the skills for the content or the curriculum that they are going into for their career choice.
And Ed, you hit the nail on the head in terms of one of the major strengths and capabilities that adjunct faculty bring to us. They bring the flexibility to respond to a rapidly changing world, but only if they swim.
Right.
If they sink, to Sonia's point, then we're nowhere. So we've got to help them.
Well said. Well said. I look forward to helping you help them. All right.
Thank you, Ed.
Guys, I don't think we have any other questions. Andrea was being kind to us. She's got kids in the background.
Okay.
She didn't want to subject us to that. All right. But guys, I want to thank you so much. This was very informative. It was informative for me. I learned some more. I probably will just continue to learn the more we dive into this. I want to thank our guests, our attendees.
Sure.
For
Jen, can you
coming.
hit the next slide?
Huh?
No, I was just going to have her go to our next slide where it has our contact information as well.
Oh yeah, please, by all means. By all means.
I'm hitting it, but it's,
There we go.
One more.
There we go.
there we go.
There we go.
All right. So that you can follow up and contact the team here and get some more information. And we look forward to working with you and a whole bunch of other folks in the days and months and years ahead. So thanks again. Thank you for coming. Guys, thank you for doing a great job. Once again, I truly appreciate it. Great job, guys.
Thanks, Ed.
Thanks, Ed.
everybody.
Mhm.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Bye.